All right, we're in Job chapters 38 through 42. First two questions, so I'm going to take them together. List at least 5 instances in these chapters where God highlights his own power. And the second question, at least 5 instances in these chapters where God highlights his own knowledge, wisdom, and understanding. The questions want 5 instances, but we're just going to look at them in general. Look at the overall theme of these chapters. In chapter 38, God starts out in verse 4 saying, "Where were you when I laid the foundations of the earth?" And beginning here, God starts to talk about his power in creating the world and everything that is in it, and that he is the one that set the bounds of everything. That he's the one who has the things in power that we see in this world. And not only did he start them off, but he continues to lord over them. He continues to cause it to rain, to cause these things to be as they are, as we see them. And so here he's highlighting to Job, look, Job, I have all power. And you do not have the power that I have. That's the first thing you can see that he's highlighting here. Also, we see him highlighting the fact that he knows all things, that he has all understanding. Back in verse 4, the end of it, he says, declare if you have understanding. The end of verse 18, he says, declare if you know it all. Verse 36, he even goes so far as to say that I am the one who puts wisdom in the inward parts, and I'm the one who puts understanding in the heart. So anyone who has wisdom, Job, anyone who has understanding, I gave that to them. So God here highlighting to Job that he is all powerful, that he created all things, that he sustains all things, and that also he has all knowledge, all understanding, all wisdom. And this is really the overall theme of these chapters. But also, there's another thing that's not in the question. There's another theme that seems to be running here, that God is highlighting not only his power, not only his wisdom, not only his understanding, but he's also highlighting the fact that he cares for his creatures. In the end of chapter 38, in verse 39, he says, will you hunt the prey for the lion? So I take care of the lion. I give the food in verse 41. I give food to the ravens. Chapter 39, verse 1, he says that he takes care of the wild goats. And in verse 5, he says that he takes care of the wild donkeys. In verse 13, he says he gave the goodly wings to the peacocks and the wings and feathers to the ostrich. He talks in verse 19 about the horse. He talks in verse 26 about hawks. In verse 27, about eagles. All of these animals, not only did I create them, but I also take care of them. You remember Jesus in the New Testament talking about sparrows. He says, aren't 2 sparrows sold for a farthing? But not even one of those falls to the ground without your heavenly Father taking note. And then Jesus says, aren't you worth more than a sparrow? Using similar logic, God here is saying to Job that I take care of the lions, I take care of the ravens, I take care of the wild goats, I take care of the wild donkeys, I take care of the ostrich, the peacocks, the horses, the eagles, the hawks. And aren't you worth more than they, Job? And so here God is highlighting his power. He's omnipotent, highlighting his knowledge, his wisdom, his understanding. He's omniscient, but also he's highlighting his care, his love, his tender compassion that he exercises towards all of the created beings. In response, going to the third question, summarize what Job says in chapter 42, verses 1 through 6, that he learned from God's response. In response, Job says, verse 2 of chapter 42, I know that you can do everything. He acknowledges God's omnipotence, that yes, you have all power. Verse 3, he says in the latter part of it, therefore have I uttered what I understood not, things too wonderful for me, which I knew not. Acknowledging that I don't know as much as you, God. I don't understand as much as you. There are things, God, that you understand that I don't understand. And this is Job's response. This is what Job got from God's message in chapters 38 through 41. Last question, why do you think God chose to reveal this to Job rather than what was revealed to us in chapters 1 and 2? I want to quickly state, I don't know. I can't say for certain why God chose to reveal this and not what we see in chapters 1 and 2, because God doesn't say. And so I can't assume to know and understand fully the mind of God. But I think it's very significant that Job did not get that explanation. It would have been very comforting to him. If we were Job, we would want that explanation. I'm sure in your own life, we have things that happen to you and you wish you had a full explanation from God as to why this had to happen. And like I said, I don't know for certain why God chose to not reveal that to him, but I can say that for your sake and for my sake, and for all of those those who call on the name of God, those who trust in the God of heaven, those who experience the injustice of this planet, and those who, like Job, don't have an understanding, all of us can actually look to Job for encouragement. We can look to the experience of Job and say, hey, we're not the only one. Job is believed to have been written, the book of Job was believed to have been written down by Moses, one of the first Bibles of the book, first books of the Bible written. And so from the beginning of the biblical record, we have this story of a faithful, righteous man, the one that God himself says is my servant, who shuns evil, who fears God. God spoke highly of Job, but Job, like many of God's faithful children throughout the history of this planet, Job suffered unjustly. But also Job, like many of God's faithful children, Job did not receive an explanation as to why he suffered. All Job had, all God told Job, all God highlighted to Job was that, Job, I am all powerful. Job, I do know all. And Job, I care. Job, I care. Job, I feed the ravens. Job, I take care of the lions. Job, I am taking care of you. I'm working for your best interest, Job. And even though I can't tell you everything right now, I'm asking you, Job, to trust me. I'm asking you, Job, to know that I am with you despite this. And that message that God is sending to Job is the same message that so many of God's faithful children have to accept. That God may not pull back the curtain and allow us to see everything that's going on. God may not give us an explanation as to why we had to suffer. God may not let us know why that disease didn't go away. God may not let us understand why that loved one had to die. God may not let us know why we had to be abused, why we had to lose that job, why we had to lose our spouse, why we had to go through evil, why we, those faithful to God, though serving God, though giving our all to God, why did we have to endure injustice? God may not let us understand it. God may not let us see chapters 1 and 2. But God gives us, like Job, revelations of his compassion, revelations of his love, revelations of his tender care, revelations of his knowledge, revelation of his wisdom, revelations of his power. And God gives those to us as he did to Job, offering these as our comfort, saying, will you just trust me? And then one day, the book of Revelation promises that in that last day, in the New Jerusalem, that God will wipe away every tear from their eyes. That, like many things in Revelation, that's metaphor, that's an analogy, that's a symbol saying that God is going to explain away, even as we continue to weep, even as we continue to mourn the loss, the pain, the hurt that we endure, the injustice. God, at that time, will explain to us chapters 1 and 2 of our life. God will explain why you had to go through that. And symbolically, he'll be wiping away each tear, the many tears, the tears that have flowed in our life when we did not understand why God did what he did or why God did not do what we hoped, what we prayed for him to do. And in that day, maybe sitting next to Job, maybe sitting across the sea of glass from Job, like Job, we will smile. And like Job, we will declare that it was good that we trusted in God. It was good that we held on to our faith in him, that even though he slew us, still we trusted him. And in that day, like Job, we will say it was good to have trusted in the God of heaven.